See, the Indian Statistical Institute, popularly called I.S.I, was founded in 1955 or so, and it was given permission by the government to give courses in a bachelor's level and master's level. At the master's level, Mahalanobis, who was the founder chairman, he decided to make it special. So, in fact, you had to have an MA before you could get into what was then called the MStat degree, Master of Statistics degree, because it was a unique combination of statistics, mathematics, and economics. And so I wanted to get into it. My father was against it because my father and Mahalanobis were opponents, largely because Mahalanobis was a chela of Jawaharlal Nehru, and my father, really came from the southern school like Satyamurthy and Rajaji and so on, and he was a congressman. But later on, at Gandhi's suggestion, he went into government service. When Gandhi had brought a lot of people into government service, thinking that now we have to run the government. So they left. My father was the professor of mathematics at Annamalai University, and so he left that and came to Delhi and became government servant. And he was given the task of creating the Central Statistical Organization, which is called CSO, which produces all this GDP and all these statistics. And Mahalanobis was given the charge of Planning Commission. But because of his proximity to Nehru, he kept on trying to reduce the status of this CSO, of the Central Statistical Organization, and as a consequence, my father's status of rank and so on. So this was quite a bitter fight. And when I said that I wanted to go to the I.S.I to do MStat because it was an exciting course, and there were a lot of famous statisticians who had come, like C.R. Rao, R.R. Bahadur, and so on. And so I wanted to study with them. So there was only one way I could get in. If I took a competitive exam and I scored over 70% of the marks. And of course, I did extremely well in that competitive exam. I got in. Having got in, from day one, Mahalanobis was quite a mean character. And he began targeting me. And by humiliations in the beginning. And slowly I began to see that even though I was doing very well and my understanding of the subject was extremely good, my grades were getting by semester started lowering. So at the end of the first year, by the end of the first and a half year, there were 2 semesters in a year. So the third semester, I was surprised to find a notice on the notice board that my grades were not up to standard, and therefore I'm given a warning, and I may be rusticated in the second, and not allowed to go to the second term. The second term of that second year. Now that meant a huge blow for me, because in those days, you see, people never thought that the student was being, somebody was being unfair to the student. They assumed that you are not a serious student, you're not up to it, your brains are not as good. And then, relatives and all these people, there's also peer jealousies. So all kinds of things. And it looked as if my career was over. And in fact, my father, out of sympathy, he proposed that I become an apprentice in the Bhilai steel plant, which was just opening at that time. And they were looking for apprentices to teach them to become to the highest promotion you could go get in your life towards your retirement was foreman of the Bhilai steel plant. So he wanted me to come for that, and I declined. Then my father, because of my undergraduate degree, was tops. I was first class, of course, but I was in the top 3 like that, and in the university, and top in my college, Hindu college. And so, on that basis, my father, because he worked during the British period also, he had a lot of English friends. And so, this Imperial Tobacco was persuaded by one of my father's friends to give me a job. I didn't take that also. And people are now convinced that I'm not a serious person. I'm just, kind of a vagabond. And I mean, it was a place where it would have broken the heart of anybody, but I was much stout-hearted. So I just sat one day in the library and wondered what I'm going to do with life, because I mean, what kind of career I'm going to pursue, because this was blocked, and then where do I go? Uh, and then at that time, the on the table, the latest issues of journals used to be put. The most prestigious journal in mathematical economics and statistics was a journal called Econometrica, where nobody from India had ever published an article in that, because it was such high standard. But Mahalanobis had got one paper of his, largely because he was now, deputy chairman of the Planning Commission. Chairman was Jawaharlal Nehru, and a lot of the scholars wanted to come to India and help in the planning and so on. So that influence, I think, partly the journal referees must have lowered their standard and published it. And I went looking at it. There was no equations in it. There was no mathematics in it. Just a series of graphs on income distribution. And so I looked at it and I said, suppose I subject this to mathematics and see what kind of equations come out. So I sat down and read Mahalanobis' article or the research paper, and then I saw soon that everything was incremental in his analysis. And so incremental means differential calculus. So I said, let me apply differential calculus and see how it goes. And I put the equations. The equations came out. Then I said, in order to get the final result, I have to add all these incrementals, and that means integral calculus. So I used the integral calculus, and lo and behold, what did I find? That Mahalanobis' entire fractile graphical analysis, this pompous sounding name, was nothing but Lorentz curve's first derivative, as they say in calculus. So I wrote it out, and I didn't have any of the facilities. I wrote it out in my hand, and I posted it to Econometrica, and it went before the referee committee, and the referee committee was headed by Hendrik Hautager, who was one of the most brilliant economists I've come across. He was in the class of Samuelson and Kuznets and so on. But he was right wing, and therefore I think Nobel Prize was never given to him. It's one of the reasons why I lost respect for Nobel Prize in economics. It's not really a Nobel Prize; it's a Swedish bank prize, which is named in the memory of Nobel. So it's sometimes easily called Nobel Prize. But Hautaker was the referee committee chairman, and he immediately accepted it, and then he sent me a message through Tarlok Singh, who was then a member of the Planning Commission and a former ICS officer who knew my father-in-law later on. I mean, at that time I was not married. And the message was, if I just wrote a letter saying that I wanted to come to Harvard, then he would give me a scholarship and admit me. And that's exactly what I did. For me, it was life had completely changed. So therefore, I wrote and I got a letter with full scholarship and PhD, and to do work on for a PhD. So I was thrilled, and I was not very discreet. So I went and told people, my classmates in I.S.I, that to hell with whether I'm thrown out or not, I am going to Harvard. I'll get a PhD there. So that when news went to Mahalanobis. Mahalanobis had earlier, when my article was accepted and it was sent to him for a reaction, he called me to his house, which was also on the campus, and told me, "You withdraw this." I said, "I will not withdraw it." So he said, "I'll ruin your career." I said, "You can ruin my career, but I will not withdraw it." And so already there was this bad blood. So when Mahalanobis found out, he wrote a letter to Harvard to say that I don't know, that he's surprised to see that I had been admitted, but whether it was by did I forge my exam marks results or so on and so forth. And we have got much better students. I can recommend someone else in his place. So Harvard replied back that we have gone by his undergraduate record and his stellar performance in being a graduate student to have a paper published in Econometrica. And that's enough. We didn't even want him to fill out the forms. So therefore, he was heartbroken because he couldn't do it. And being an opportunist, he swung around and he held a function. And mysteriously, all my grades were revised. And Mr. Mahalanobis announced to the whole world that, we have just our first batch of MStat students one of them has been accepted at Harvard with full scholarships and so on. So they just did publicity for his own institute. But that changed my entire life. I would never have been an academic but for that. And so therefore I tell everybody, never be despondent. We never know when things will change and go much better than you think.